Okay, let's set the scene. It's April 14th, 1865, Ford's Theater, Washington, D.C. The mood is, well, probably relieved, right? A night out for President Lincoln and his wife. But then, someone slips into the presidential box. Quietly. A single shot. .44 caliber Derringer pistol. And the silence is just shattered. History changes right there. President Lincoln, he dies the next morning, April 15th. The first U.S. president ever assassinated. But, our deep dive today isn't really just about the assassination itself. We're zooming in on someone else. A really fascinating, really debated figure from that whole story. Almost a footnote, but what a footnote. Dr. Samuel Mudd. And the big question, the one we're going to try and unpack for you today, is this. Was Dr. Mudd actually in on it, a knowing conspirator? Or was he just, I don't know, a decent guy, a doctor, caught in the absolute worst place at the worst possible time? Let's get into it.
Yeah, and the sources we got here, they're pretty concise, but they really lay out the sequence of events quite clearly, give us a good framework, to explore this whole, this historical puzzle around Mudd.
Okay, so Booth, he shoots Lincoln, then what? He leaps from the box, right, onto the stage, and breaks his leg in the process. I mean, imagine that, the adrenaline, the pain, but he has to run. He and this other guy, David Harold, they knew they had to get out of D.C., like, immediately, before the army locked the whole city down.
Right. So think about it. You're Booth. You've just assassinated the president, your leg is broken, the army's after you, where do you even go? Their escape takes them about 30 miles out of the city, near Bryantown, Maryland, to a farm. And this farm belonged to Dr. Samuel Mudd.
Okay, Dr. Mudd, what do we know about him?
Well, context is key here. He was known as a Southern sympathizer. That alone would raise flags in Washington. And he also served as a Confederate surgeon during the Civil War. So, his loyalties were already kind of under suspicion, at least from the Union perspective.
So Booth and Harold arrive at his farm. Booth's obviously hurt badly. And Mudd, being a doctor, does what doctors do, right? He treats the injury, sets the broken leg. But then, and this feels crucial, Mudd invites them to stay the night. What do we make of that? Offering shelter. Does that cross a line from, just doing his medical duty?
That's really the heart of the debate, isn't it? The sources suggest the big turning point for Mudd's awareness probably came the next day.
Yeah.
He apparently rode into town, and it's there he hears the news, the absolute shocking news about Lincoln being assassinated. It's thought he probably heard it from a tavern keeper, a guy named John Lloyd.
So he hears Lincoln is dead, and presumably he connects the dots back to the injured man at his farm.
Presumably. I mean, you have to think so, right? The
Yeah.
timing, the injury. The sources say when he got back home, his reaction was immediate. He told Booth and Harold they had to leave. Now.
And they did. They went on to get help from another sympathizer, Samuel Cox, before continuing their run south. Right, so for the next, 11 days or so, Booth and Harold are basically dodging the Union Army. It must have been this incredibly tense chase, a real cat-and-mouse game playing out across the countryside, the whole nation watching.
Absolutely. Huge pressure to catch Lincoln's killer.
And it finally ends April 26th. They get cornered in a barn near Port Royal, Virginia, property owned by a Richard Garrett.
Yeah, the standoff, it didn't end well for Booth. He refused to surrender. He was shot through a crack in the barn wall, and he died shortly after. Harold, though, he gave himself up. No resistance. Arrested right there.
So with Booth dead, the investigation naturally turns to, okay, who helped him? Who was part of this? And that investigation leads them pretty quickly back to Dr. Mudd's farm, right?
Straight to his door, yeah.
It seems like it would be simple. He treated the guy, he let him stay, case closed.
Well, not quite so simple, but the evidence that really sealed it, it was pretty damaging. Remember Mudd claiming he didn't recognize Booth when he showed up injured?
Yeah.
Well, witnesses came forward, and they testified that actually Mudd and Booth had met before on several occasions.
Oh, okay, that's different.
Exactly, that discrepancy. Mudd saying, I don't know this guy, when others are saying, hang on, you've definitely met him. That's what led directly to his arrest as part of the conspiracy.
Because it suggests he knew who he was helping, right? Or at least that he was lying about not knowing.
Precisely. It wasn't just about the treatment anymore. It was about potential prior knowledge, or at least knowingly aiding the escape after realizing who Booth was and then trying to cover it up.
So what happened to Mudd then after the arrest?
The consequences were swift. He was put on trial, military tribunal, and he was convicted. Conspiracy to assassinate President Lincoln. Sentenced to life in prison.
Life? Wow. Where did they send him?
Not just any prison. Fort Jefferson. It's this really remote military fort way out in the dry Tortugas off the coast of Florida. Pretty harsh place. Hot, isolated. Sometimes called America's Devil's Island. Must have felt like the end of the world.
Okay, so life sentence in a remote, harsh prison. That sounds like the end of the story, but it wasn't, was it? There's this twist. 1869, President Andrew Johnson gives him a pardon. How does that happen? After a conviction for conspiracy in Lincoln's assassination.
It's a truly remarkable turn, isn't it? And the reason is, well, extraordinary. It turns out there was a massive outbreak of yellow fever at Fort Jefferson while Mudd was in prison there.
Yellow fever. Oh, wow, that's deadly, especially back then.
Absolutely devastating. The prison doctor died. Chaos. And Dr. Mudd, the prisoner, stepped up. He used his medical skills. He worked tirelessly to treat the sick, prisoners and guards alike. He's credited with helping to contain the outbreak and saving many, many lives.
So his medical skills, the very thing that sort of got him into trouble by treating Booth.
Ended up being his path to redemption, in a way. His actions during the epidemic were heroic, by all accounts. It gained him a lot of sympathy, even from the guards and staff at the prison. And that support was crucial in eventually securing that presidential pardon from Johnson.
That is quite a story. Dr. Samuel Mudd. A life that touches on, well, possible complicity in one of America's darkest moments. And then also undeniable heroism, saving lives in a terrible epidemic. It's no wonder people still debate him today.
It really forces you to grapple with labels, doesn't it? Guilty, innocent, villain, hero. His journey from treating Booth to fighting yellow fever, it really shows how complex history is, how people can be caught in these incredible situations and the paths they take. Well, they aren't always straightforward. It makes you think, what does his story tell you? About people under pressure, about chances for redemption, about how we judge the past.
Absolutely. And maybe that's the takeaway here. Keep looking at these historical moments, especially the stories that seem like footnotes, because sometimes, like with Dr. Mudd, the most fascinating insights, the most human stories are found right there, caught in the crosscurrents